Greetings and salutations, friends and family. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I've got a terrifying Dogman encounter to share with you. Before we get on with this encounter, I have a couple links I'd like to share as well. I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel continue to grow. Those links are in the description below. Also, I have a second channel for creepypasta, fan fiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that don't fit on this channel. If that's anything that you're into, follow that link below and give them a listen. You may just like them. And with that, guys, let's get on with this encounter, shall we? I'm 20 years old and I live near a small town in Wayne County, West Virginia, called Levelette. My family and I are originally from Jacksonville, Florida, and during my childhood we eventually moved north because we couldn't handle the humidity and oncoming hurricanes. Now, what I'm about to tell you guys is 100% true, and I swear upon my life that what I experienced is something that I'll never forget. It was last autumn, on August 27, 2017, when my experiences first began. It was a Saturday evening between 6:30 and 7:30 p.m. I was driving home from taking an incredibly long drive. I drove from my home to a town of Wayne, then past Tulsa and Louisa, and finally as far as Chapsmanville. I guess I drove way too far for my liking. Anyway, it was getting dark, and I eventually found my way home in the form of a road called 8th Street near Levelette that led me to Mount Union Road. It was the road that took me straight to the house of one of my dad's friends named Ezra, where there was this road called Walnut Gap Road, and that was where it takes me home. Now, on this road, there's a blind curve next to an old abandoned white church, in which I always slow down on before driving around the curve, just to make sure nobody was gonna fly around that corner at night. As soon as I did that, there's a 6-foot ledge on the left side of the road. Some small trees have fallen over, whereas on the other side there's a steep hillside that has a path cleared through the thick underbrush where the deer like to hide. And right at that spot is where my first encounter happened. Just as I slowly drive around the corner, I see this thing step out onto the road on all fours. When I first saw it, I thought it was a 500-pound male black bear because it was roughly the same size as one, and we do have a few roaming around. But then I noticed that it actually was more like a wolf because it had a long bushy tail, pointed ears, and a canine-like snout, in the same body shape as a wolf, with jet black hair and glowing amber-colored eyes. By the time it stepped onto the road, the wolf turned its head towards my direction and stared right at me. I was ecstatic at first to actually see a wolf in the wild, but at the same time I realized there was something rather off about my encounter. There shouldn't be a wolf out there this big. In fact, the more I think about it, there shouldn't even be wolves in West Virginia anymore, since the timber wolves that once lived here were killed off. Was the state government secretly using conservation efforts to repopulate wolves here in the state? Did a pack of wolves escape from a wildlife sanctuary and somehow found their way here? If so, then how did this one get so freaking huge? Not only did the wolf's abnormal size catch my attention, so did the look in its eyes. They looked different from any other kind of eyes I've ever seen on a dog before. They looked more intelligent. Whatever the theory I've had to support any rational explanation for this unusual sighting was immediately shot away when this creature did something that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. Something that still haunts my soul to this very day. When we were both staring at each other, even while I'm inside of my car, I heard this sound like popping bones. And to my absolute shock, I watched this wolf place its hand on the top of my hood of the car, raise itself off the ground, and stand upon its two legs. Yeah, you heard me right. It wasn't a paw that placed on the hood, it was a hand. When the wolf stood up and my headlights hit it square on, that's when I got a real good look at what I was staring at. It was easily 8 feet tall and weighed approximately 6 to 650 pounds or more. As I said, it was covered in jet black hair and seemed quite feral in my opinion, as if it hadn't been cleaning itself for a while. Bushy long tail and 2 glowing ambered eyes. To my shock, it was more than a wolf standing on its hind legs. It had a human-like torso from the waist up that appeared pretty muscular, with broad shoulders and long forearms, longer than those of a normal human being. I could see the muscles of this wolf man pulsating with each breath it took, especially in the headlights. It also had this dexterous hands that looked almost like raccoons, but with more elongated fingers and long jet black claws at the end of each fingertip. They looked like they could be used to easily manipulate any kind of prey in its clutch, and they looked like they could easily rip me to shreds, or maybe they could do more than just that. The hind legs resembled more like a dog or a wolf. This I can easily tell because they bent backwards and had these massive paws for feet, and from the looks of which it was standing on its toes more than its foot. It had a massive head similar to that of a wolf or a large German shepherd, but bigger in proportion, with pointed ears and tufts of fur at the tip of each ear, as well as a long muzzle with these great big fangs out of the front of its snout. To be honest with you, the fangs had a very eerie resemblance to a simiodon or a saber-toothed tiger, but the rest of it just looked like a werewolf. But the eyes were the one thing, the only thing about my encounter that night that I'll never forget, and even writing about this right now to tell you sends bone-chilling fear down my spine. As I said prior, the eyes looked extremely intelligent, far smarter than any animal I've ever come across in my neck of the woods. But they also held a feeling that told me I was looking into the eyes of something that just spelled evil out of them. Finally, I gained this overwhelming sense of dread after seeing it walk to the side of my car on its back legs, slowly bent down to level its eyes with mine, and I froze in pure, unadulterated horror when it used its hand to jiggle the door handle to try to open my car door. Fortunately, all the doors of my car were locked and every window was up, but this still horrified me to the point where I couldn't even breathe. This wolfman, as I previously referred to it as, gave out this grunt and actually frowned at me for a few seconds before standing back up and walking to the other side of the car and jiggling the passenger side handle. Whatever this thing was, it was intelligent enough to know what a doorknob, or in this case, a door handle, is for. At this point, I was absolutely shaking in my driver's seat with the same fear that latched onto my soul. Have you ever been through an experience in your life where even though you know you're the apex predator all your life, you find yourself going in the wilderness alone and you suddenly feel so weak, so vulnerable, so helpless in the eyes of such a beast like this? That's exactly how I felt at this time of my encounter. I felt like this thing, a creature that shouldn't even exist yet is standing right in front of me, was the true ruler of the forest, and we humans had nothing compared to what it really could do. It could have easily ripped the doors off my car and pulled me out of it. It could have caught up to me if I tried to escape, and even if I tried to scream for help, it wasn't going to help me because I knew how powerful this predator was, even if I don't know it yet. Just by looking at the wolfman, I knew a human being wouldn't have stood a chance against it. And I knew that it knew that I knew it. I honestly thought I was going to die that night, that my family and friends would never see me again, that they would never know that I was about to be killed or eaten alive by something no one even believes exists. and that there was nothing I could do about it. However, none of that ever happened to me. It was as if God was watching over me that night, protecting me from this malevolent beast that was circling my car. Instead of attacking me head on, the wolfman bared its teeth at me and let out this extremely deafening snarl before walking around the front of the side of my car and crossing the road on its hind legs in just 2 steps. The encounter didn't end there, though. By the time it crossed the road, it paused for a couple of seconds before it slowly turned around to look at me one last time. As soon as it did that, I could have sworn right there and then that it was not alone. It looked over its shoulders and I could see multiple pairs of eyes staring directly at me. I knew they were the same creatures as the first one because they had the same eye shine and gave off the same growls as well. I estimate that I saw at least 5 other pairs of eyes staring at me. 3 of them were low on the ground on all 4s and the other 2 were standing upright. But they didn't reveal themselves out of the darkness like this one did. In my opinion, I think he was the alpha male of the pack. If you all think encountering one werewolf-like creature was terrifying enough, imagine how I felt when I saw there was more than one of these creatures. With that scary thought, I snapped out of my trance and decided to get the hell out of there, slamming hard on the accelerator. I bolted away and drove out of there like a bat out of hell. I'm not pulling your leg here, but the distance from right where I was when I saw those things to home, I literally arrived home and pulled in the garage in just 1 minute. By the time I arrived, I was in tears. I never felt that scared before in my entire life, and not only that, that was the first time I ever cried that much in a long time. My parents were concerned about the state I was in and asked me what happened. I basically told them everything that transpired just before I pulled in. Now, I may have made up different stories and stuff before, but that was only when I was little and whatever I experienced wasn't a joke. I told them the whole truth with honesty, but the terror in my voice. But of course, they didn't believe me. They just assumed that I saw some sort of black bear, and driving after dark makes it have your mind play tricks on you. But this wasn't a trick. I know what I saw. I was 19 at the time. I respected the DUI, so I wasn't driving drunk home that night. I wasn't dreaming of this incident, nor was I hallucinating it. It wasn't even a simple misidentification. I know what I saw, and there's no doubt in my mind that it was real. After this encounter, it affected me so much that I was forced to isolate myself from everyone I knew, including my family and friends. For a little while, over a month or 2, but eventually it broke out of my shell and got back into the social life again. However, I took this time to do some intense research on what I saw, and that's when I came upon the Dogman phenomenon for the first time. According to several eyewitness testimonies, people have reported seeing the same exact creature all over the United States and even in some remote parts of the world. This filled me with some relief, knowing that I wasn't alone. That there was people out there who swore on their lives, and even to this day, what they saw was real. They're not haunting part of humanity's imagination like we all believe them to be. Monsters do exist in this world, and this fact alone makes us how small our world really is. To me, it makes me wonder that if a pack of werewolf-like creatures can exist, then what else could be lurking out there in the shadows, watching us with their intelligent eyes, waiting for us to prove their existence in man's world? I told you guys that that was going to be one terrifying yet interesting Dogman encounter. A pack of them surrounding one person in a car in West Virginia. Now, I don't know how many of you live in West Virginia. I do know I have one subscriber in you know who I'm talking about. But I've driven through West Virginia on the way to Florida. And it's a very isolated state. I'm from upstate New York, and I think of isolation as the mountains and the woods, but it's still rural-like community where I live. This is just long roads, deep woods, scary in the dark. When I drove through West Virginia, it was pitch black, and I was scared. I was driving a big Ryder truck full of furniture, petrified. Imagine how this guy felt. And then to see a pack of them in the woods, knowing the alpha just approached you, leveled his eyes with yours, and wanted to do whatever. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this story. I want to thank you all for all your support. And like I said, I've got a ton of other stories that I'm working on right now that I cannot wait to share with you. I've got alien encounters. I've got chupacabra. I've got sea creatures. Whatever you guys have asked for, I've compiled and am working on them right now. I needed to share this story with you because this is one of my favorite Dogman encounters. Beside the West Virginia horse incident. I love that one as well. Anyway, guys, have a great day and be kind to each other.